The torchlight throws a yellow circle on painted walls. A jackal god, a field of stars, a name carved to last forever. Then the headline that never dies, The Curse. It sold newspapers in the 1920s, stitched together coincidences, and turned one infection into a ghost story. But the full picture is better than a scare. Ancient Egyptians did write warnings at some tombs. European writers and reporters built a catchy legend around those words. Modern science then checked the story with hard numbers. Who really died? How many? When? What about mold, bad air, or dust? Let's take a walk from myth to data. From crocodiles and hippos and fearsome warnings, to a British financier's razor cut, to a 10-year conservation effort that set humidity and carbon dioxide limits for one small famous tomb. How the curse story took shape. Warnings around Egyptian burials are real, but they mostly look like legal notices. A few inscriptions threaten anyone who would harm a tomb's door, statues, or offerings with judgment or harm in the afterlife. Such warnings are rare in the record, and they occur mainly in non-royal tombs. Royal monuments relied more on priests, sealed doors, and distance, not on dramatic threats. In script and tone, many warnings read more like no trespassing than a horror story. The modern concept of a deadly pharaoh's curse is largely a 19th to 20th century invention. When Howard Carter and Lord Carnarvon found Tutankhamun's tomb in 1922, the excavation came with exclusive press rights. Rival newspapers chased rumors to compete, and a handful of sudden illnesses or deaths were spun as supernatural proof. One famous voice even added fuel. Arthur Conan Doyle speculated about elemental forces, a quote reporters loved to print. The press campaign amplified patterns humans are good at seeing, coincidence into public belief. The most publicized death was Carnarvon's in April 1923. Doctors described erysipelas and blood poisoning after he nicked a mosquito bite while shaving. It was a tragic but ordinary infection, not a mysterious toxin. Other facts cut against the legend. Carter himself lived until 1939, roughly 17 years after the discovery. Many who worked in the tomb lived long lives. When the timing of deaths was actually counted decades later, the curse effect faded. The press, though, had already planted a durable myth. Even now, museum tours and TV scripts repeat phrases that first saw print in 1923, phrases that never existed on Tutankhamun's walls. Real hazards did exist, and still do. Tombs and storerooms can contain dust, microbes, bat guano, and stale air. In some cases, mold grew on paint because the walls were sealed before they fully dried. Food offerings, moisture, incense, and a human body all fed that early bloom. Decades of visitors later, humidity spikes, elevated carbon dioxide, and foot-carried dust became the bigger threat to fragile paint, not a supernatural force. The lesson is practical. Context, care, and airflow matter more than headlines. One more scene belongs here. In November 1922, the door opened on a small royal tomb cluttered with gilded shrines and furniture stacked almost floor to ceiling. The stash survived because the entrance had been hidden under flood-washed debris. The drama of that first peek, wonderful things, was real. What came next, the mass-market curse, was a story built for sales, not for accuracy. Archaeology has since worked to separate the thrill from the facts, to read the warnings in their own time, and to test the health claims with data. That sorting job is how a myth becomes history. What ancient Egypt actually wrote and believed. Egyptian tomb culture joined religion, law, and family duty. The dead person needed offerings, names spoken aloud, and a sealed, safe place. A warning inscription served three aims. First, it framed desecration as a moral crime, with consequences at judgment, where a heart was weighed and the devourer waited for the guilty. Second, it invoked local gods as witnesses, naming punishments a community would understand. Third, it set a social boundary at the door. This is family ground. Do not enter. That is why these texts feel legal. They mark jurisdiction as much as they hiss a threat. Surviving warnings are uncommon. Scholars point out that many royal tombs instead carry long religious texts, while private tombs sometimes display short warnings keyed to local fear and pride. One repeated idea is proportional justice. Whoever does harm, harm will return. Others tie wrongdoing to practical loss. The violator's heirs may not inherit. Offerings will not be accepted. These are not cinematic curses. They are community rules wrapped in sacred language. The goal is to protect and care for the dead across generations. It is important to note that many tombs display no warning at all. Guarding a tomb typically involved access control, including a location in the desert, hidden shafts, sealed doors, and caretakers. So, what about the idea that the Egyptians booby-trapped their tombs? The record favors low-tech security and social enforcement over traps. When later writers describe swinging blades or poison dust, they are importing adventure tropes. The actual measures, distance, sealed corridors, nested shrines, and rituals worked well enough that many tombs were looted only after years, when social order weakened. In short, a curse was one tool among many, not the most common one. The afterlife texts and the living cult mattered more. Finally, remember that a tomb was a house for eternity. Families visited, priests maintained rituals, and the name on the wall had power if spoken. Warnings protected those rhythms. When a text promises that someone who defaces names will face divine judgment, it is about keeping memory intact. The modern use of the word curse bends that purpose. What Egyptians wrote often aimed at continuity, not shock. The difference between a calm warning and a curse in a shocking headline is the difference between a community's rules and a marketing hook. Myth versus data. The most quoted curse case is Lord Carnarvon's death. He died in Cairo on April 5, 1923, weeks after slicing a mosquito bite while shaving. Physicians recorded erysipelas and streptococcal blood poisoning. There is no need for toxins to explain sepsis in a middle-aged man with chronic health problems. The story gained traction because it occurred months after a famous discovery, not because it matched a medical pattern associated with tombs. When researchers finally asked a clinical question, did people linked to Tutankhamun's tomb die sooner than similar people who were not? The answer was no. A study in the British Medical Journal compared those exposed to the tomb with matched controls and found no extra risk of death in the first decade after opening the burial. The mean age at death in the exposed group was approximately 70 years, compared to 75 years in the unexposed group. The difference was not statistically significant. A curse that does not change life expectancy in a measured cohort is not a curse. It is a story. What about mold, tomb air, and dust? Those are real, but they are conservation and occupational issues, not proof of a supernatural threat. Microbiologists have shown that brown spots on Tutankhamun's painted walls are consistent with early microbial growth, likely fueled by moisture and organics when the tomb was first sealed. Later, as the tomb dried, the growth stopped. Decades of tourism then introduced new stresses. Visitors' breath raises humidity, carbon dioxide climbs in the small space, and air exchange draws dust in. That combination is particularly harsh on fragile paint and those with allergies or compromised lungs, but it is predictable and fixable. Recent surveys at other Egyptian sites have mapped living microbial communities and identified fungal risks to stone. Conservation journals now publish information on how to control these agents, including improving ventilation, filtering dust, and managing capacity. None of this requires scary myths to be interesting. It shows how ancient rooms interact with modern crowds and climate. To address the real risks, Egypt's Ministry of Antiquities and the Getty Conservation Institute spent a decade studying and upgrading Tutankhamun's small tomb, 2009 to 2019. Engineers and conservators set clear targets for the environment: limit relative humidity swings and cap carbon dioxide at around 1,500 parts per million during visits, install new filtration and ventilation systems, redesign walkways to keep people off fragile surfaces, and clean dust embedded in paint from earlier, less careful treatments. This is the opposite of a curse. It is measured mitigation based on sensors, logs, and repeated trials. One final twist reveals how science often dispels fear. The same fungus family long blamed in headlines, Aspergillus flavus, has become a target for research on useful molecules. News coverage in 2025 reported early lab results on compounds from Aspergillus flavus that show promise against leukemia cells. It does not prove that past deaths were fungal. It underscores a theme. Study replaces superstition, and even a tomb fungus can become a valuable tool. Numbers, places, and people doing the work. Walk the Valley of the Kings today, and the scale is clear. The valley has around 65 numbered tombs and chambers, with many small pits and a few giant tombs. The largest, KV5, built for the sons of Ramses II, has more than 120 rooms and corridors mapped so far, with more still being cleared and studied. Tutankhamun's tomb, KV62, sits at the small end of the Valley of the Kings scale. Its compact layout was likely dictated by his sudden death. It became world famous in part because flood debris and overlying construction hid its doorway long enough to deter most ancient looters. The headline today is not a curse but rather conservation. After decades of heavy tourism, Tutankhamun's tomb underwent a comprehensive audit, including condition mapping, material analysis, airflow studies, and visitor impact data. Then came practical fixes: new barriers, improved lighting, filtration and ventilation, floor and path upgrades, and a policy that limits the number of people who can be in the chamber at once. Conservation reports clearly describe the targets: maintain a peak relative humidity of about 60% and keep daily swings tight. Capped carbon dioxide at around 1,500 parts per million. These are museum-style controls adapted to a desert cave filled with 3,000-year-old paint. Behind those numbers are people. Egyptian conservators, trained on site, now teach others. Engineers design systems that can be serviced locally. Documentation crews, comprising photographers, scanners, and modelers, create digital records to enable future teams to track changes. Journalists noted how the work replaced big dig heroics with a slow, methodical process: measure, map, sample, publish, argue, repeat. That rhythm preserves art better than any charm. There is also humility in the maps. Many tombs were looted in antiquity. Some were reused or flooded by desert storms. The valley's count has grown slowly as new chambers are identified and old ones are reinterpreted. Numbers shift as projects refine the plan or disentangle reused spaces. That is normal science at work. You will see ranges in print, 63 here, 65 there, because discoveries and definitions are constantly evolving. The heart of the matter does not. This rocky ravine was the royal cemetery for the New Kingdom, with a handful of very large tombs and many small ones, most robbed long ago, all fragile now. And yes, the curse still sells. However, the numbers that keep these rooms alive are more interesting: chamber counts, airflow rates, target humidity levels, and visitor limits. The stories that inspire are better too. A conservator easing old adhesive off a painted surface so it stops shining under flash. A guard reminding a tour to step lightly. A microbiologist proving that an ugly brown spot stopped growing decades ago and is now inert. That quiet work turns superstition into stewardship. The rewards are immediate: a stable wall painting, a safer shift for staff, a plan that will still work when crowds return in force. Conclusion: curses make great headlines. Inscriptions with firm warnings do exist, but the killer tomb owes more to 1920s news copy than to ancient law or modern medicine. The medical records surrounding Tutankhamun's opening reveal a normal spread of outcomes: Carnarvon's sepsis following a razor cut, Carter's prolonged post-dig life, and a controlled study that found no increase in early deaths among those associated with the tomb. Meanwhile, the real hazards, dust, mold, stale air, are handled by ventilation, filtration, and crowd limits, the result of a decade-long conservation project with clear environmental targets. In the valley itself, the big truths are countable and mapped. Dozens of tombs, one with more than 120 rooms, most of which were opened in antiquity, all of which require care today. The fear story is fun. The reality, rules on walls, numbers in journals, and people at work, is stronger. It lets remarkable places stay open and beautiful without a single spell. How would you like to get a deeper understanding of history, impress your friends, and predict the future more accurately based on past events? If this sounds like something you might be into, then check out the brand new Captivating History Book Club by clicking the first link in the description. To learn more about Egypt's history and its many mysteries, check out our book, Egyptology, a captivating guide to ancient Egyptian history, artifacts, and the secrets of the pharaohs. It's available as an ebook and paperback. If you found the video captivating, please hit the like button and subscribe for more videos like this.